Today, we're going to start the conversation with Sailesh Ramakrishnan, Managing Partner of Rocketship.vc. Sailesh, welcome to the show. I've known Venki and Anand for a long time, so I'm very happy to meet you, and this is going to give us an opportunity to get to know each other a bit.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me, Shramana.
So Sailesh, why don't we start with a little bit of introduction about yourself and Rocketship.vc, and then we'll dive into the core topic on the table today, which is AI investments.
Sure, absolutely. So Anand, Venki, and I started Rocketship back in 2014. And since you know them, my connection to them is Anand and I are classmates from IIT Madras.
Yeah.
So that's how we went to school. Venki is also from IIT Madras. We actually shared the same dorm as well. So we have multiple connections there. My travels to the Bay Area happened because I started a job at NASA here at the Ames Research Center, where I was working as a computer scientist on the Mars rover project for about 4+ years. I thought that was the realization of one of my dreams, to work at NASA. Though when I was a kid, I actually wanted to be an astronaut, like most other kids. But at least it was fulfilling to at least work at NASA, working on things that go to other planets. But then I discovered an even larger passion, if you will, and that happened to be startups. So I left NASA when Anand and Venki were starting their second company, and so I joined them early in that company. And I really enjoyed this journey of going from zero to one, starting things from scratch. You're empowered to pretty much go build anything and see it actually go out into the wild and see if people like it. So with that experience, I really learned a lot about, building startups, building software, working in things that eventually become very large in scale. And as a consequence of our approach, we were acquired in 2011 by Walmart. So we went into Walmart as a new division. We created this new division called Walmart Labs, which was supposed to be sort of the innovation arm at Walmart. And that gave me an even more different and interesting perspective working at Walmart scale. Walmart was, perhaps still is, the world's largest retailer. And there was a lot of opportunity to figure out how to do things that we were interested in doing, but at Walmart scale. But at the same time, I still had this sort of remnant wish where while I had worked with Anand and Venki, early on from in their startup, I had not founded a startup myself. And there were several ideas that we had developed along the way. So a coworker and I decided to go start a company as well. So in 2011, about 6, 7 months after I had spent some time at Walmart, I decided to start this company, and Anand and Venki were one of the earlier investors in that company as well. We created a marketing platform for small and medium-sized businesses, and in 2014, we were acquired by Square, the cash register company.
Okay.
And so that's when I had another decision point. I could have continued into Square or decided to do something new. And at that time, um, um, you know, uh, one of the things that I was really excited by is going back once again, try and doing something from zero. And so the three of us got together to start Rocketship. Rocketship is a global VC, very similar to your podcast. We have investments in 14 different countries, 20 different sectors, and the key innovation we are bringing to the process of venture capital is we use AI and machine learning algorithms to find prospective investment candidates. So we have one of the largest databases of startup data. It's about 400 terabytes, and our machine learning algorithms, and there's multiple families of machine learning algorithms that run on this data set every day and recommend which companies are the hottest companies for us to reach out to. Also inside these algorithms is a lot of cutting edge Gen AI algorithms at work that help us understand the large amounts of unstructured data that is available about startups. To quickly summarize where we are with Rocketship, we manage just over 250 million. As I said, we invest in companies globally. We are an early stage investor, so most of our investments cluster around the Series A mark. But we have investments earlier than that as well as the seed level, and we have also invested in companies that are at Series B stage. Um, we have had a lot of success with this approach, finding really exciting companies. And some of the notable investments are several Indian companies. There is a company called Moglix, which is one of the largest B2B commerce providers. We are investors in Agnikul, India's most recent successful space launch company. We are an investor in a company called Wasabi here, which is one of the largest storage companies, a competitor of Amazon S3. So this approach has actually allowed us to find some of the best companies in the world and have the opportunity to invest in them. Um, Rocketship also happens to balance out the multiple exciting needs that all of us have. It gives us an opportunity to live for a tiny bit of time the startup life vicariously through most of our entrepreneurs, but also ourselves in the sense that we are building something from scratch. It also allows us to scratch our computer science itch in the sense that we are actually actively building these algorithms on a daily basis. So it's always an interesting challenge to figure out how to improve these algorithms. And so it's a culmination of a lot of our interests coming together in something that we enjoy doing pretty much every day on a daily basis.
So, Sailesh, Rocketship does both B2B and B2C, right?
That's correct.
So, could you double click on your AI algorithm of finding companies and give us a case study of a company that you found with that algorithm, and what was, what were the heuristics of how you found this, and what were you looking for? How did the algorithm find what you were looking for, and then how did you go about developing that relationship and finally investing in that company?
Absolutely. I'll provide you know a little bit more detail about this process, but I do want to warn you that one aspect of my answer is not going to be very satisfactory, and that is the ask for, is there a single secret sauce parameter that when we see that happen, we know we are onto a successful company. That, unfortunately, throughout our 10 years of searching for, we haven't found.
But I haven't
We have
asked you
found
that
many.
question. I've asked you for just case studies.
Okay. So this is a company that we found in India. This is a company called Apna. They are a LinkedIn blue collar LinkedIn for India, and an amazing set of founders. The main founder Nirmit actually spent a lot of time here in the U.S. Went to Stanford, saw the value of professional networks, and then realized that this was one of the biggest gaps in India, especially at the blue collar level. So he would actually go sit with some of these workers in these various factories and try and understand why it is that they were not able to improve their lives. That's his story, but we didn't see all of that. What we started seeing was um, he had created an app just simply to connect people, and among the various things our algorithms found, this progress of this one app suddenly started showing up in our screens. On a daily basis, what happens is our algorithms rank various lists of companies. And so this company out of India, out of all the companies globally, started showing up, which was very interesting. And so we started looking at what was going on with this company. And we were able to both talk to the company as well as understand what they were doing, mainly because we had this unique mix of understanding of what's going on here in the US, as well as because of our Indian backgrounds, understanding the need in India. So we connected with this company just before their Series A, which was exactly where the company was experiencing a point of inflection. Until then, it was still a little bit more experimental what they were doing, but right around the time we connected with them, the network effects of professional networks started coming into play. And so we started seeing a rapid growth, both in terms of the downloads of their app, as well as the usage and the comments and the value that was being delivered. And so we realized that we were onto something really exciting. And so we made our first investment right around the Series A. And our algorithms continued to follow them. And we invested both at the next two rounds as well. And fast forward to a year later, they reached unicorn status, where they're one of the largest professional blue collar networks in India. A quick update on them, and you're going to probably hear them in the news more often. But India has been going through a significant sort of surge in growth, and one of the key needs for the country is jobs, and especially increasing the spread and accessibility of job opportunities across the large population. And Apna is going to become an integral part of the Indian government's vision to enabling jobs across the country. So,
So go ahead, please finish.
sorry, just to conclude the thought. So, our algorithms found this company, which, as I said, was a fast-growing company at exactly that right time, where that point of inflection was happening.
So it sounds like there are a few heuristics that I picked up from what you said. One is you are monitoring certain apps, or your algorithm is finding apps that are starting to rise in adoption in various app stores and so forth. That must be one way the algorithm found this company. And then on top of that are heuristics like the founder's background and schools and so forth, the usual stuff. Um, what other heuristics is the algorithm deploying to locate companies, promising companies?
Absolutely. So, uh, at this point, we have somewhere between 50 and 100 different parameters that our algorithms track. And as you mentioned, things that are easily visible, like App Store downloads, usage, retention, web visits. Those are all several of the class of traction metrics that you can see online. But even simple things like, newspaper articles, number of patents, publications, versus, as you also mentioned, information about the founding team, information about the other employees, even simple things like the kinds of jobs that the company lists gives us insight into what is going on in a company. A company that is successful, for example, usually make their first critical sales hire when something great is happening. Until the early stages, typically it's founder-led sales.
Yeah.
But when the company feels confident enough to hire their head of sales, that usually is a confident signal that things are going well within the company and so on. So if you look at the vast majority of things that we look at, you can sort of separate them out into 60 to 100 different distinct parameters.
Mhm.
And they fall into sort of three, four different categories. So that might be sort of more helpful. So one set is already the one we talked about, which is traction related. The second is the one you also mentioned, which is a lot about the founder, the founding team, and the employees. The third has to do with other investors and what their opinions are about the company. So, who are the earliest angel investors, for example, is also a very good signal about the quality of the company. And the fourth is a sort of the value that the company is generating in terms of other people's opinions. It could be reviews, it could be ratings, it could be comments from employees on Glassdoor, for example. So it's a lot about the public perception of the company.
Mhm.
So a combination of all of these things are distilled by our algorithms to determine both that this is an interesting company and that this is the right time for us to approach this company.
Interesting, very interesting. And what are the data sources? Of course, there is just scraping the internet, but um, are you going into proprietary data sources to do this kind of modeling?
Absolutely. In fact, when we started back in 2014, that was the key question. What was the data going to be, and whether there was enough data with insight in order to create or build on this approach. So we started off exactly how you suggested, which is scraping the web to see what data was available. But luckily, we had sort of thought about this idea at that time when a lot more formal data providers were starting up as well. So analytics providers, for example, regarding app downloads and web visits were coming online, and that data became accessible. There were also other providers offering information regarding, press clippings, newspaper articles, and so on. And over time, we have sort of an evenly balanced combination of both web visits, information that is available both from a, sort of structural perspective that we acquire, as well as what we crawl. Our most recent data set happened to be from the financial and traction side. So we have recently been consuming credit card data at a very summarized level as well. So it's a vast majority, and pretty much, as I mentioned, almost things that you may not even think of as a signal end up becoming signal. And so we are one of the largest consumers of all of this data.
Interesting. Very interesting. All right, so now I'm going to switch back to the more usual way I do the AI investment thesis discussion, which is to ask you what is your perspective about your firm's perspective about AI investments, and how are you thinking about it? What is your investment thesis in AI?
Absolutely. Um, So I think it must be pretty obvious to all of your listeners already that we are in the midst of a tremendous wave when it comes to AI. Uh, but what I think might be also interesting is to set a little bit more context there, since we are practitioners of AI or have been through most of our careers. This is probably the fourth wave of AI excitement that we have seen in our own lives. I started in AI mainly because of this first wave or whatever, second wave that happened, almost 30 plus years ago. So we have been seeing these waves. But at the same time, I think it's important to note that this current wave is different. Every wave has been different. Every wave, unfortunately, has been oversold a bit. Um, but this particular wave, I think, is both oversold, but also, um, I think, underneath, there's been a significant change that has happened.
It's
So
real.
one easy
It's
thing to
oversold,
point
but
out,
it's real.
every wave has been more real, and this one has was a significant leap forward,
Yes.
much more so than the previous ones.
Right.
And I think you can point to two things that clearly show that. One is the amount of investment from a wide, broad base. You're seeing investment from large companies, you're seeing investment from VCs like myself. And then the second is the pace of adoption. I mean, today, I think it is reasonably taken for granted that any company needs to have an answer to how they are using AI in their organizations in order to, at the very least, stay in time with the rest of the world. If not, they're going to get left behind. Now, going to the answer to the question you had asked about our thesis. So we've started tracking the most recent wave since 2018, because one of the significant values that come from our data-driven approach is that we are able to spot trends early. So in the mix of companies that our algorithms rank, the number of AI-related companies started rapidly increasing back in like late 2018 onwards. So this is, again, to give context, of roughly 2 years before ChatGPT launched. So we started seeing this excitement early on. And we started watching what they were trying to do and realized that there was a fundamental change. Because, again, to set context on the timing, 2017 was the Transformer paper. 2019 is when we started seeing companies adopting those ideas and started building things. And our thesis started separating itself into three, four parts. First is that we realized that these models that are being created, these foundational models, are going to be tremendously impactful, but are also going to be tremendously expensive to build.
Mhm.
And therefore, while OpenAI, I think, is an anomaly, where an individual company was able to generate this, we expected this fully to be in the realm of the large companies, the Googles and the Microsofts of the world. And we realized that area might not necessarily be a place of investment for a VC like us. We are a smaller sized VC, and hence the amount of capital that was going to be required by those companies would be very large for us. The second category, which was perhaps more interesting, was that almost every one of these foundational models required a lot of tooling around them. When you think about things like vector databases, when you think about execution automation to build, monitor, and even evaluate and check whether the quality of these models was great, required a lot of tooling. And that became a very interesting area, and we started focusing a lot more. But even there, we felt like while these are going to be potentially successful companies, their valuation is still going to be capped as a smaller percentage of the total AI wave. And so, really, where the value was in products and verticals where AI was going to get incorporated on a fundamental basis. At the time we started tracking this, there weren't, most of the applications were a little bit more just technology demonstrators. You saw them applied to chat, you saw them applied to images and videos. Applications weren't arising yet. And so we started monitoring actively for applications. And there we started, again, from our thesis, seeing a bifurcation. There were a certain set of applications that were literally low-hanging fruit, which were just applying AI or Gen AI directly to a use case, but not with any significant advantage. So no proprietary data, no deep insight into the needs of the product, just effectively an efficiency game where you could replace humans with a reasonably good Gen AI system. Examples of this include things like copywriting or first tier of customer support being automated and so on. So those were relatively simple use cases, which again we felt were good and important, but would not lead to significantly large successes. So the core of our investment focus today is deep vertical applications of AI that either incorporate sort of custom data that is not commoditized, not broadly available, and an understanding of a deep customer problem or a business problem. So that's been our focus. That's been where we've been investing in.
Can we talk about a few use cases of the kinds of companies you've invested in with that thesis?
Absolutely. So I can point to one of each. So in the tooling area, we are investors in a company called Talc. Talc tries to solve the problem of how you assess the quality of output coming from an AI system. Um, AI systems are supposed to be near to or replicate human responses for a wide variety of use cases, but they're also very convincing in the answers they provide, even if they're completely wrong. People call this hallucinations, but even beyond hallucinations, AI systems at this level can and will make causal errors in their reasoning and so on. So you need a more smarter way of evaluating the quality and the responses that come from an AI system. And so Talc creates a platform that provides that opportunity. Today, the solution, even companies like Google, the solution that companies like them have adopted is human evaluation, because they believe that you can't use an automated system to evaluate AI, you can only use humans. But that is not a very scalable solution. So Talc has come up with a hybrid way of doing this, where humans are still involved, but the vast majority of the evaluation is done by a hybrid process of both humans and AI.
What is an
So that's
example?
one.
What is an example of the kind of things Talc does? Like what?
So for example, let's take a use case where, let's say you had deployed an AI system to guide a customer through a banking transaction process, right? And so what you have is your AI system and the bank customer's responses. And at the end of it, the job of the sort of quality evaluation system is to determine whether the customer was happy or not, or the customer was taken to the right destination or not. And uh, at the simplest way of doing this is, did the customer sign off saying they're happy, right? But that doesn't give you enough feedback to improve your algorithm. So then the idea is to look at it step by step and say, did the AI system choose the right sort of conclusions at every step of the process? So the first step of what talc does is uh, it sort of looks at the conversation and generates these waypoints or milestones where the AI system made choices. And for the most part, it gets those sort of waypoints correct, but then a human then confirms that these were the right choices to make. And so this hybrid then allows you to get the confidence that this would be very close to what a human would have concluded
Okay.
through this process as well.
Okay.
And hence the this is now a valid sort of evaluation of this conversation.
Okay.
Um, the key there here to understand though is that the AI system could have gotten sidetracked here or there, which would have been okay because humans get sidetracked too. The 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 key is not to measure every step of that conversation, but only measure that they took the right choices along the way to get the customer to become happy. That's one sort of high level example. There are other examples that are specific again to the various different use cases.
Okay. Let's talk about a vertical use case, a
Yes.
vertical company that you've invested in.
Right. So the second sort of use case that has to do with verticals is a company called Dili, Dili. It's a short for diligence. And what they offer is a software system that helps investors perform diligence on deals. um, uh, not just investors like myself, but if you look at large investors who are making deals that are worth billions of dollars, usually those transactions involve large amounts of paper or information regarding the company. Let's say you are taking a company private, and a public company private. Um, the amount of information, the number of contracts, the number of financial documents, the number of business relationships, you're looking at, what are 50, 60 boxes of information. um, Deal teams are then put together, and usually large banks have like 50, 100 people pouring through all of these documents, and usually these transactions take a year or two to consummate because of the wealth of information that has to be sort of consumed. This is something that Gen AI systems are actually good at trying to sort of synthesize and summarize. They can read through a lot of these documents and try and identify what are the salient things that are present. So you can actually ask questions. So you can ask questions like, was there ever a quarter where the revenue dipped more than 20%? And this may not necessarily be in a single document or a single graph, but because Gen AI systems have this ability to synthesize a lot of information, they can provide that kind of insight. The human then can go then further due diligence on that point and say, okay, so why did that happen, whatnot, and so on.
Okay.
So Dilly allows you to synthesize vast majority of information in order to be an efficient sort of co-pilot to the legal or financial teams doing deal diligence. Um, but this is not just simply a problem of, okay, take all this data, throw it into your chat GPT system, and out comes the answer, because a lot of this information has a lot of context and structure, and you have to be able to understand things like spreadsheets and graphs and connections between a legal document and a financial document and so on. So there's a lot of vertical knowledge that is required, and a combination of legal as well as financial acumen is needed in order to do a job well. So this is one of those vertical solutions that we have been.
Interesting. Sailesh, what is, let's just follow through on the same case study of Delhi. What is the adoption and what is the experience of the company in gaining adoption around this particular use case?
Um, so the company has been moderately successful in gaining adoption. The challenge is in making sure to sort of come to market not as a company that is going to solve all of the diligence problem, but more so as acting as a co-pilot or an assistant to the humans in the loop. And I think that strategy is one of the key things that we have seen differentiating companies that are able to get adoption versus ones that are not. There are many companies that seem to sort of oversell the promise of AI by saying, hey, we will replace all of these people. And as I mentioned, that might have been true in some of the more sort of lower technology tasks, like, first level customer support or whatever. But for the most significant AI use cases, right now, the best solution still happens to be a hybrid approach. So the first thing to note is Delhi sort of approached the problem not to replace the human analysts or the human legal expert, but as a co-pilot, as an assistant to them. So that was one. The second is at the initial stages, it's very hard to become as good or better than somebody who's been doing this for 15, 20 years, right? They have a nose for where the sort of the issues and the problems in a given company might have. That I don't know if an automated system can learn. So also, architecting the system in such a way that the humans can provide that kind of large experiential domain knowledge, which then can sort of help guide the system, has also been helpful in sort of gaining adoption. But as of today, they are still being used more from a, you know, let's see how much value they can add rather than them becoming the standard yet. So that I think is a little bit, still in the future. But the adoption has been more towards the direction of this is already now adding value, because as you might imagine, these folks are very busy, and anything in terms of software that doesn't add value will only be a distraction and will get dropped by the wayside. Dilly has at least crossed that chasm where they're able to show value. Now the question of how much value they will show and how much value they will deliver and how integral they become a part of the future diligence process is the mountain they're currently climbing.
And what is the attitude of the people, the humans who were doing this due diligence? And let's say they were taking a year to do this due diligence, and your value proposition, Dilly's value proposition, is to maybe cut that short by a lot. Are they willing to train Dilly to automate some of their manual functions, or are they defensive?
So it depends on the customer. I know it depends also on their mindset. But for the most part, and I'm now speaking at the very edge of my knowledge, so I'll just be open about that as well. Since we are investors in Delhi, but I'm not day to day in their conversations with customers. But from what I've heard from them, um, people are actually very open because this is a little bit of a tedious process in terms of pouring through boxes and boxes of paperwork. There has been a lot of interest from a customer perspective in having something. um, the biggest concern that they have expressed is whether the answers are going to be accurate, truthful, and dependable. This whole thing about not just hallucination, not just about the system making stuff up, but also about whether the reasoning is right, whether the system is not putting two uncorrelated things together that a human would never do, but for a system that doesn't have deep understanding, it might. So Dilly has been solving that from day one with an approach of explainability. Especially in these kinds of situations where you're consuming proprietary knowledge, that is, set of these large set of deal documents, um, there are ways in which you can point to a source document and say, hey, this is where I found this number, or this is where I discovered this graph, or these are the three facts that I chained together to come to this conclusion. That is one of the key aspects of what Dilly is doing in order to gain confidence from the human users, which is that I can, at least to a first order approximation, explain the answers I'm trying to provide. But again, it's not perfect yet, and there is a lot of work to be done. But I would say most users so far have fallen into two categories. One is cautious optimism that this is really going to work and save time for them, versus the second camp is, well, this is interesting, but I don't know whether it's actually going to save me time, or is it going to take me down the rabbit holes that I prefer not to. But at the high level for a startup, both camps are still interested in at least trying it out.
Mm-hmm. You know, just talking to various people about their various experiments and experiences selling enterprise AI software in vertical AI, I think this issue is coming up in that, to train an AI model, you need people who really have deep domain knowledge in that workflow, in the kind of data and the kind of heuristics that they're applying as human beings to do whatever it is they're doing. And when you're really trying to automate a lot of stuff that people are doing manually, I think it's a very delicate balance to get those people to impart that knowledge into training that AI to automate their functions. And I think it's not been an easy journey for the product people to design these products and enhance these products and get the products to be more effective because of that tension.
Oh, absolutely. I think um, the key insight again that both Talc and Dilly adopted is to show value pretty much out of the box, at least to convince the end user that there is something here that is worth a little bit more investment in. That if they spend a little bit more time, they will get more value because already out of the box they're getting some value. And then if they've spent a little bit more time helping this automated system, they will generate more value. And that has been an important aspect to show that value
Yes.
upfront initially. It's not easy to do in many other domains, but in at least these few examples that I've sort of laid out, it has been possible. But I think you're absolutely right that it takes a little bit more convincing for an end human expert to really impart a lot of their knowledge. And sometimes a lot of their knowledge is not necessarily expressible, obviously, in their heads. Like, as in, when you ask them questions, they would absolutely tell you exactly the thing. But ask them to give give guidance to an AI system, they don't know where to start. So it's also an interesting human-computer interaction challenge to extract some of this large wealth of knowledge that is in our human experts.
Yeah, and I think that the organization inside of an enterprise that would have some of that knowledge, at least some of that knowledge institutionalized, is the training. So if you have a large group of people who are doing a certain function, the people who train those people have at least some amount of institutionalization that could be codified and get an algorithm started. And then beyond that, the refining of that is that's where the trickiness of the product management lies.
Absolutely.
So, but it's everywhere. It's all over the vertical AI problem. So, unless you have somebody who's a deep domain expert in that function, it's not so easy to bridge that gap. And so most of the people who are succeeding have resident domain experts in a particular domain in which the company is playing.
Absolutely. One other approach, interestingly though, that AI researchers are now adopting is the realization that it's very hard for human experts to train, but they are now creating AI systems that can learn by observing. So you're not necessarily having a conversation with the human as much as you're observing all the humans' reactions,
Mm-hmm.
humans' actions, humans' questions, and trying to see if you can build a model. The AI system now can build a model of the humans' expertise and understanding. And if something doesn't match, then perhaps ask the human a pointed question saying, hey, why did you make this choice here? Or why did you press that button there? Because that doesn't match the model. So this learning by observing is becoming a big part of the new wave of learning systems today.
Mm-hmm. So you've brought up hallucination. Of course, this is one of the pushbacks everybody's getting from especially mission critical enterprise applications. Um, there is also talk now of small language models being more effective in enterprise applications than large language models, that they hallucinate less, they're more constrained, and so on. What are you seeing?
Um, So the challenge of hallucinations, I think, at least from our perspective, is just a challenge that comes from the first sort of crude, unconstrained models that were created, where we basically just threw all of this data into the system and said, reason with it. Um, Even since then, we are now already 3, 4 generations forward. Um, I think the vast majority of the hallucination problems are being resolved. Now, can we completely remove every possible hallucination path? I don't think so yet.
Think so.
However, um, the more obvious challenges of taking completely random two facts and then joining them together and creating a brand new fact, those kinds of things I think are being reduced. Um, Smaller models have always been something that we have personally believed are going to be the direction. But also, we have also believed that smaller models that are focused in particular domain data
Mm.
sets, as in not a broad reasoning system that knows everything from the sky is blue to, what is
You
the
need,
direction in
right?
which you
There's
turn.
no need. If you're trying to solve problems within a specific domain, you need a small model which is completely trained in that domain. It's cheaper to train, and it's cheaper to build. So it's a much better strategy to work with a small model that is constrained, and not have these very large models that go haywire.
I agree, but the challenge that people have been trying to balance is at some point you also need some sort of common sense reasoning, and that's part of what large models provide. Like I said, they learn a lot about how common sense can be reasoned with, and that's initially, at least, the initial examples of where you had aha moments
Good
with
points.
ChatGPT.
Yeah,
That's when you saw those. So that's where I think you're right in the sense that you want the small models, but you want them to be not so small that they're only constrained to knowledge within a particular domain, but that they have some amount of that common sense knowledge as well. So that balance of the right size of model where there is generic information and domain specific information allows for exactly the kind of impact that you are suggesting, which is lesser hallucinations, more on point, but also having that little bit of common sense to make that leap in reasoning.
One possibility, one direction this could all evolve is that you have a, kind of a platform as a service like OpenAI, or any of the large models, and then on top of that you can develop a smaller model that is more constrained, that takes advantage of the common sense learning of the bigger model, but then really focuses on the domain specific models and works on that.
Well,
Uses
absolutely.
using.
In fact, that's almost what I see most companies doing today. So, a
Yes.
company that wants to build something doesn't just completely build only on top of OpenAI. They use OpenAI for certain things, but then it's part of that platform approach that you mentioned, because they also don't want their data to leave the confines of their company, right?
Yeah.
And asking OpenAI questions, every prompt is also an input to OpenAI. So you want to be careful about what you use OpenAI for and what you use your internal data sets for. But almost every company that I have spoken with is adopting this kind of approach where they have their own internal models that work on their proprietary data, and the generic reasoning is taken over by the large models out there.
Interesting. Okay, I think in the interest of time, I need to let you go and work with Winston. So thank you. I will continue the conversation as things develop in due course.
Absolutely. Thank you. It's my pleasure for having been here. So thank you so much for inviting me, and thank you for the fun conversation as well.
Nice to meet you.
Bye bye, Shramana. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.